My name is Edward Miller, and I am 68 years old. At this age, I sometimes feel like I'm more a shadow than a man. Shadows don't take up much space, they don't speak much, and most of the time, people don't even notice when they're gone. That's how I've felt for years, standing in the background of my own life. But lately, the silence has become so loud that it's impossible to ignore. I never thought the later years of my life would feel this way. When I was younger, I used to imagine a retirement filled with warmth, dinners with my wife, visits from my daughter, laughter, maybe even grandchildren running through the yard. But instead, what I have is a house filled with unspoken words, resentment, and a daughter who barely looks me in the eye. My daughter's name is Rachel. She's 34 years old now, living in the city with a career that keeps her constantly busy. When she does come home, the visits are short, polite, and painfully awkward. There was a time when she adored me. I remember her tiny hands reaching for mine, the way she used to sit on my shoulders during parades, her laughter ringing in my ears as though the world itself had been built just for us. But somewhere along the line, something changed. Somewhere, I stopped being the man she wanted to call Dad, and became someone she resents. It's not that she yells or argues with me. That would almost be easier. At least then, I'd know where I stand. Instead, it's the silence. She talks to her mother freely, laughs with her, makes plans with her. But with me? A forced smile, a nod, and then nothing. I've become a ghost in my own family. The truth is, I think my wife, Margaret, plays a bigger role in this than she realizes. Or maybe she does realize it. Margaret has always been strong-willed, outspoken, the type of woman who commands attention the moment she walks into a room. People respect her. Sometimes they fear her. And Rachel, my daughter, has always looked at her as a role model. A mirror of the kind of woman she wants to become. I, on the other hand, am quieter. More reserved. I was the provider, the one who worked long hours to keep food on the table and the lights on. I believed that was enough. But maybe it wasn't. Because while I was out working, Margaret was shaping Rachel's world, her values, her beliefs. And slowly, I think Rachel started to see me as unnecessary. I've overheard conversations between them that left me hollow. Times when Rachel criticized me, called me out of touch, too quiet, too soft. And Margaret? Instead of defending me, she'd sigh, sometimes agree, sometimes laugh it off. Those little moments, they cut deeper than any knife. Last month, we had a dinner at home. Rachel had come to visit after months of silence, and I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd reconnect. I cooked her favorite meal, roast chicken with rosemary. I spent the whole day preparing it, humming to myself in the kitchen like an old fool trying to hold on to scraps of hope. When she arrived, she hugged her mother tightly, but when she saw me, her smile faltered. She kissed me on the cheek like it was an obligation. At the table, the conversation flowed, between her and Margaret. They laughed about work, about fashion, about a new restaurant downtown. I tried to join in, mentioned a book I'd been reading, but Rachel barely glanced at me. She turned right back to her mother as if I hadn't spoken at all. And then came the moment that shattered me. Rachel raised her glass, smiling at her mother, and said, "To the strongest woman I know, the one who taught me everything I need to survive in this world." They clinked glasses, both laughing. I sat there with my wine untouched, invisible. Not a word of acknowledgement. Not a glance. That night, after they went to bed, I sat alone in the dark living room. The roast chicken sat cold on the table. I stared at the empty plates, the wine glasses, and the echo of their laughter. And I realized, I don't exist in their world anymore. It's strange how memory works. That night, I kept thinking back to the first time Rachel called me her hero. She was 6 years old, had just fallen off her bike and scraped her knee. I carried her inside, cleaned the wound, and she looked up at me with those teary eyes and whispered, "You're my hero, Daddy." How does a man go from being a hero to being a shadow? What did I do wrong? Did I work too much? Did I fail to say the right things? Or is it simply that I was never enough compared to Margaret? I don't sleep much these days. The silence in the house keeps me awake. I hear Margaret and Rachel talking late at night, their voices soft, warm, full of affection. And I lie there, on my side of the bed, listening, knowing that my voice will never join theirs. I've started to wonder what it would mean if I simply stopped trying. If I stopped forcing smiles, stopped cooking dinners, stopped pretending I still had a place in their lives. Maybe if I faded into the background completely, they'd finally be happy without the burden of me lingering in the corner. But then another thought comes, maybe my silence would finally make them notice what they've lost. Maybe absence is the only way they'll hear me. I haven't told anyone this, but I've started writing letters. Letters to Rachel, letters to Margaret. Not angry letters, not bitter. Just, the truth. Words I've never been able to say out loud. I don't know if I'll ever give them these letters. Maybe I'll burn them. Maybe I'll leave them behind when I'm gone. All I know is, something has to change. Because right now, I feel like a man waiting for his own funeral, sitting at the table while the people he loves most celebrate life without him. This is the beginning of my story. The story of a man forgotten, a father unseen, and a husband slowly erased. And maybe, just maybe, the story of how I take my place back, or vanish completely. My daughter's name is Emily Miller, and she is 36 years old. To me, she will always be the little girl who used to run barefoot across our backyard, with grass stains on her knees and a smile bright enough to light the darkest room. But now, when I look into her eyes, I see exhaustion, resentment, and a sharp edge of bitterness. It all started years ago, in small moments that grew larger over time. A disagreement over college choices. A fight about independence. A silent dinner after an argument no one could win. Every word spoken became a brick, and every silence became cement. Slowly, a wall was built between Emily and her mother, Margaret. I still remember that night, 10 years ago. Emily had just been accepted into a graduate program across the country. She was glowing with excitement, waving the acceptance letter in the air. "Dad, Mom, look. This is it. This is my future." But Margaret's face hardened. "Across the country? Emily, that's not a future. That's you running away from your family." Emily's smile faltered, her voice rising. "No, Mom, this is me building a life. Why can't you just be happy for me?" And that night, everything changed. What should have been a celebration became the start of a Cold War. Now, all these years later, the wounds remain open. At family dinners, Emily avoids eye contact with Margaret. Conversations are sharp, short, and laced with sarcasm. And me? I sit between them, pretending to eat, but inside I feel my heart being pulled apart in two directions. Emily calls me sometimes, late at night. Her voice cracks on the phone. "Dad, I can't keep doing this with her. Why does she always see me as the enemy?" And I have no answers. Only silence. Because how do you tell your daughter that the woman she resents is the same woman you still love? It happened one Sunday afternoon. Emily had come over for dinner. Margaret had cooked her favorite meal, as if food could mend broken hearts. But instead of gratitude, Emily snapped. "You think cooking for me makes up for years of not listening? For years of making me feel small?" Margaret slammed the serving spoon down. "I did everything for you. Everything. And all I get is hate." The room shook with their voices. Plates rattled. My hands trembled. And then, silence. Emily grabbed her coat and stormed out. The front door slammed so hard it echoed through my chest like a gunshot. I sat there at the table, staring at the untouched food. Margaret was crying in the kitchen, Emily was gone, and I, the old man, was left alone in the wreckage of love. The father's dilemma. That night, I sat in my armchair with the lights off, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the pounding of my own heart. I thought about calling Emily. I thought about holding Margaret. But instead, I did nothing. Because what could I do? I am just a bridge, and sometimes, bridges break under too much weight. The days that followed were quiet, but in a different way. Not the heavy, suffocating silence that had hung over our house for months, but a gentle, tentative kind of stillness, like the calm after a storm, when the air smells clean and fresh. I watched my wife and daughter carefully, each learning to navigate the fragile threads of trust and forgiveness. Rachel began helping Margaret in the kitchen again, asking about her day, sharing small stories about work and friends. And Margaret, ever stubborn but loving, started smiling more, letting her guard down, showing that warmth that first drew Rachel to her as a child. It wasn't instant. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. One afternoon, while I was reading in the living room, I overheard them in the kitchen. "Rachel, Mom, I'm sorry for not keeping in touch while I was away. I didn't mean to hurt you." Her voice cracked, hesitant, but sincere. "Margaret, I know, sweetie. I understand why you made your choices. I missed you terribly." The words were simple, but the weight behind them was enormous. A wall that had taken years to build was finally starting to crumble. I could hear tears, soft laughter, and small apologies. And for the first time in months, the house felt warm again. I stayed quiet, letting them have their moment. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about them, mother and daughter, finding their way back to each other. Sitting in my chair that evening, I realized something important. Love is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes, it's quiet. Sometimes, it's patience, endurance, and faith that the people you love will eventually find their way. I have spent decades trying to be a good husband and father. Sometimes I failed. Sometimes I felt invisible. But witnessing this, the reconnection of my wife and daughter, felt like my life's work finally mattered. Family is fragile. Relationships are delicate. And yet, the human heart is resilient beyond imagination. It can heal, forgive, and grow, if we are willing to wait, to listen, and to hold on when it feels impossible. Silence can destroy, but communication rebuilds. Patience can break walls, and understanding can mend hearts. If we cherish the people we love, even the longest gaps can be bridged. And so, this story ends not with bitterness, but with hope. With warmth. With a home finally filled with laughter again. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of someone you love, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends and family. Stories like these are meant to be remembered and shared.